Welcome back to another video. Last time we left off with the supplies passed from the rock and the British ship's convoy giving supplies to Greece. We are now on to naval action in the Mediterranean, November 27th, 1940. Sea battle off Sardinia. On November 27th, British naval and fleet air arm forces made contact with two enemy battleships escorted by cruisers and destroyers to the west of Sardinia. Although the Italian ships opened fire, they soon broke off the action and retired. A cruiser, two destroyers, and the vessels being seriously damaged before their escape. One British fighter plane was lost, and the cruiser Berwick suffered slight damage. Above, a British destroyer firing at the Italian ships as enemy shells fell astern. Below, a British destroyer and cruiser taking up positions before the engagement. So here we see the British ship, and there's the Italian shells. They're just too far behind. And here we see those two ships getting ready for the engagement, ready to fight the enemy. The Italians, once again, they try, but they just never seem to catch the British Navy. They just never do. They always get outplayed. It's kind of weird, honestly, that they just were so ineffective. King George visits bombed Southampton. November 30th, 1940. Air terror in the British provinces. After the conclusion of the Battle of Britain at the end of October, the German Air Force changed tactics and launched heavy night attacks on ports and industrial towns in the provinces. One of the most severe was a raid on Southampton on November 30th. The business center of the city bore the brunt of the attack. Churches, shops, houses, a film theater, and a newspaper office were among the buildings hit. A few days later, the king visited the stricken city. He is seen above, accompanied by Herbert Morrison and the mayor of the city, inspecting the damage. So there we see the king. He would do this, obviously, because it would help boost morale and show to his people that, no, look, I care. I'm here to inspect the damage. I'm here to see what they did to our great empire. Which a lot of people would respect. They would be like, oh, the king is here. He will do something. Which he couldn't right now, but he, I'm sure, had plans to. Tower of London and other landmarks damaged in air raid. November 1940. The changing face of London. By the end of November, many of London's most famous landmarks, churches, hospitals, theaters, movies, stores, and other public buildings showed signs of the nightly raid bombardment. A few of those damaged in November raids are shown here. Top left, part of the Tower of London after an air raid. The 800-year-old walls appear to defy Funny Mustache Man no less successfully than the steel and concrete of 20th century. Bottom, the famous and fashionable church of St. James Pictorial? Yeah. Top right, the Houses of Parliament were damaged, where damage was done to the cloisters and crypt. Bottom, the auditorium of Drury Lane's Theatre, where a bomb exploded in the rear of the orchestra. So there we see the Tower of London. The wall's still standing even after being bombed. And like they said, it's kind of crazy to think that this old building still stands even after being bombed, just as good as any of the steel and concrete of the 20th century. And there we see, just making sure I say the right one. Yep, that's the Church of St. James Pictorial. Piccadilly? Piccadilly? Piccadilly. St. James Piccadilly. Don't know why it's so hard to say. St. James Piccadilly. And it's still standing. Yeah, there's a lot of rubble here, but still defying. Here we see the Houses of Parliament, which, yes, obviously have been heavily damaged. But, once again, it may be damaged, but you can always rebuild. If the people are still there, you can always rebuild. And then here, the Drury Lane Theater. Bomb exploding back there. Near where the orchestra would be. Yeah. London stood strong. Anzacs in Egypt undergo intensive training in desert warfare. November 1940. Australians prepare to hit back. Little news came from the Western Desert during November. Though occasional minor engagements took place between advanced forces, meanwhile, the Anzacs carried out intensive maneuvers in readiness for the day when the order for serious attack on the Italian positions would be given. Above, Australians training with their Bren guns, Bren gun carriers in the desert. Below, carriers moving up in battle formation for an assault. Top right, infantry moving up in dispersed groups behind the carriers. Bottom right, carriers negotiating a desert ridge. So here we see them with their Bren gun. Here we see the carrier group, like as it says, moving up. The infantry following. Yeah, so you'd have them soften it up, basically, like similar to what the Germans did with France. Basically, have your mechanized go first, and then the infantry follow behind. So you have the quick, rapid destruction, and then the infantry to hold it. And then here. And look, they did a fancy, like, picture thing. Ooh, so fancy. It's between two pictures. Fancy. But yeah, and then here we see them negotiating a desert ridge. "30th of November to the 1st of December, 1940. Italians back in Greece as prisoners." After the capture of Koritsa, the Greeks pushed on in eastern Albania towards Pegradets, the capture of which was announced on the 30th of November. 4 days later came the news that the town of Premiti had fallen to the Greek army, advancing from Pindun. That was right. Every day, hundreds of prisoners fell, many of them willing enough into Greek hands. Here, in a Greek concentration camp, is a batch of them lining up for rations. And yeah, we can see them all getting in line saying, well, I need to eat. But yeah, the Italians, they'd rather be, like anyone, they'd rather be captured than killed. You know, live another day, live another day, live another day. That's more important than just dying. For a lot of people. The Italians especially, at first, they did want this war, the Italian people, but as time went on, more and more of them were like, yeah, we don't want this. When we get later into the war, when the British and the Americans invade, they'll see that many Italians just welcome them, say, hey, welcome, you know? Yeah, that Il Duce guy, yeah, we don't really like him either. Can you guys get rid of him for us? And obviously, the only reason the Italians, we still say, oh, well, Italy was still blah, blah, blah. It was the Germans. The Germans were holding Italy. So it wasn't the Italians, really. I mean, there was some, but not really. They didn't want the war anymore. They were done. They said, yeah, we're done. Greeks score 2 important victories, December 5th to 8th, 1940. Quaranta occupied. Santi Quaranta, the Italian southernmost Albanian sea base, was occupied on December 5th by the Greek army advancing along the coastal road. On the same day, the Italians evacuated Argirocastro, which was entered by the Greeks, advancing through Delvino on the 8th. Many prisoners and great quantities of war material were taken by the victors in both places. Above, Greek airmen about to take off for a raid. Below, a view of the harbor and town of yeah, whatever, you know what I mean. There's the Greek airmen. They're like, hey, ready to go take off for the raid, chief. And there we see I'm assuming Greek ships pulling into the harbor, just getting ready to take it. And this is going to be the last one for this video. Italian raids on Greek towns. December 1940. Air attacks on Greek civilians. The Italians, in the face of unexpectedly successful resistance of the hardy mountain troops, resorted to terror tactics in the air. The tiny Greek Air Force, magnificently as it fought, could do little to mitigate the effects of ruthless attack on civilians. Above, an Italian photograph of a bombing raid on Yanina, the town which the Italians had unsuccessfully attempted to encircle at the beginning of their invasion. Below, shattered houses in Castoria. So there we see, from an Italian perspective, we see they bombing the town that they couldn't take at the beginning, which is kind of ironic. They're like, well, fine, if we can't have it, then we're just going to bomb it. Which, kind of petty. And here, we see damage in Castoria. Very similar to what happened in, obviously, Britain. But, yeah. The poor Greek, like they said, the Greek Air Force, they fought magnificently, but there was too little of them to hold it off. Alright, that's going to do it for this video. If you guys liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a comment. Tell me what I can improve on. I really appreciate your feedback. And as always, subscribe. It really does help. Thank you.